This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight now, we bring you a discussion on India-Vietnam Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. The participants are Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist.
Today, the Prime Minister of India and Vietnam held a virtual summit in which both leaders decided to take the leadership forward, and both leaders also discussed various issues. Ambassador Sajjanhar, when we see this virtual summit of India and Vietnam, and we see that Prime Minister Modi in his opening remarks very clearly talked about the peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. We see that there is as such no mention of China per se, but we all realize that whatever is happening in the South China Sea and in the neighborhood, somewhere the reference is to China's aggressive behavior in the neighborhood and also globally. How do you see this?
You are very right, Simran, when you say that in all these deliberations that have been taking place in different fora, multilateral, bilateral fora, the name of China is usually not mentioned. I think one of the reasons is that most of the countries are quite heavily invested as far as China is concerned in terms of their economic partnership with that country. I think we need to realize that China is the second largest economy of the world. It is the world's largest trader. So most of the countries in the neighborhood here in South Asia and Southeast Asia, they have very strong economic relations with China. As you said very rightly, China has been very aggressive and assertive over the last many years, but particularly so since the beginning of this year. Still, when we talk about open, free, inclusive, peaceful, stable Indo-Pacific, we don't take the name of China, but all indicators are for China. You're very right when you mentioned that Prime Minister Modi and the Vietnamese Prime Minister, both of them referred to this, and what they have said that there is joint vision document that has been signed today. It is for peace, it is for prosperity, and it is for people. And Prime Minister Modi said that this is an indication of what relations between two countries should be.
We've also seen that in this year there were several high-level visits from the Vietnamese side despite the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Vietnamese Vice President also travelled to India in February. And the two Prime Ministers have also met online during the ASEAN-India Summit last month. We also see that this is also the Act East policy of India put into action when we see this growing relationship between India and Vietnam. Ambassador Sajjanhar, how do you see Vietnam then positioned in India's Act East policy, and how do you see this relationship then going forward?
I think it is one of the most significant partnerships as far as India is concerned in Southeast Asia. You're very right that a number of interactions have taken place between the two countries in this year, 2020, notwithstanding the fact that the general activities have been quite adversely affected by the coronavirus pandemic. The Vice President of Vietnam was in India in February of this year. The two Prime Ministers spoke with each other in April to discuss the approaches to the coronavirus pandemic. We had the Joint Commission meeting between the foreign ministers of the two countries in August. We had a meeting between the defense ministers of the two countries in November. And of course, last month also there was the India-ASEAN Summit, which were chaired both by Vietnam on the ASEAN side and by India. I think it also needs to be recognized, Simran, that this is the first virtual summit meeting that Prime Minister Modi is having with any country in Southeast Asia, in ASEAN. This is the 9th virtual summit that he is having with the other countries. It started with Australia a few months ago, but this is the first one with any ASEAN country. So, as you said, as far as the Act East policy of India is concerned and also the Indo-Pacific vision of India is concerned, Vietnam is a very strong pillar. Over the last few years also, if we see, there has been a very active exchange of visits at the highest level. Last year, we had our Vice President visiting Vietnam. In 2018, we had President Kovind visiting Vietnam. In 2016, we had our Prime Minister who visited Vietnam in September of that year. And that was the time when the strategic partnership was upgraded to the comprehensive strategic partnership. On the other side, in addition to the visit of the Vice President earlier this year, we had the visits of the Prime Minister and the Presidents of Vietnam coming to India in 2018. So there is a very vibrant and dynamic exchange of visits at the highest level. and this gives an indication of the leadership that it takes a very positive view, and this is the most significant partnership in that particular region. I think this has also been made clear in terms of the interest. I spoke about the joint vision document that has been signed. There is also a plan of action that has been signed today, which will delineate our relations from 2021 to 2023 for the next 3 years. 7 agreements have been signed on very critical issues. Defense partnership has become a very important element, I would say one of the most significant elements of our relationship. And there's a defense agreement that has been signed. There has been an agreement on nuclear energy, on scientific research, on petrochemicals, on renewable energy, and also on cancer treatment of patients. So I think, as you had mentioned about peace, stability, prosperity in the region, Vietnam will play a very important role in this partnership.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, when we refer to the defense ties between India and Vietnam, there has also been some literature that has come out which says that maybe India is a little hesitant to go forward with its defense partnership with Vietnam because of the China factor. Do you feel that the pact that has been signed today and the way India and Vietnam have decided to take forward the defense partnership now finally deals with that critique?
I think so. There might have been a little bit of a reluctance on both sides. I would say more on the sides of Vietnam rather than on India, because you would recall that the offer of $500 million was made to Vietnam in 2016 when Prime Minister Modi had visited there. And that was basically for defense procurement. You remember that in July 2016, we had the decision by the Permanent Court of Arbitration that had come on the South China Sea, and that is why, whether it is Philippines or Vietnam, they were trying to see how to deal with this issue as far as China is concerned. So maybe Vietnam at that time was not particularly keen to take it forward. Also, what I understand is that Vietnam was keen to use this money for infrastructure development rather than purely for defense procurement. But I think now all these issues have been settled, and as the Vietnamese Prime Minister himself said, that in addition to the 7 agreements, there is another agreement that is on defense that the two sides are signing. The other element of this defense partnership is the line of credit for $100 million for procurement of 12 high-speed patrol boats. And that is very, very essential because, as we know, as far as South China Sea is concerned, China has claimed it as a part of its own maritime territory, as a part of its own property. And so it does not permit countries like Vietnam, like Philippines, like Malaysia, like Brunei, the rights that they are entitled to under the United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea 1982. They are entitled to go and fish in certain parts of the territory. They have an exclusive economic zone of 200 nautical miles, and beyond that there is the continental shelf. But China does not permit these countries, and in fact a number of Vietnamese trawlers, Vietnamese boats have been sunk by China, and Vietnam has really not been able to protect itself. So this procurement of the high-speed boats, which can be used by Vietnam to safeguard its own territory so that its own fishermen, its own trawlers can go out and fish, I think that is very important. I think also other in a slightly different way, because now our energy cooperation with Vietnam is also increasing. Vietnam is very keen that Indian companies should be able to come and should be able to explore for oil, for gas, for minerals in its own exclusive economic zone. China has been threatening these countries since this region, this whole South China Sea under the 9-line belongs to China. So these countries should not be coming to exploit unless they have the permission from China. But Indian companies, whether it is the ONGC Videsh Limited or it is SR, they have been putting their money. In fact, it is expected that SR will be increasing its investment to $11 billion in exploring hydrocarbons in the South China Sea in the EEZ of Vietnam. So all this defense and energy relationship, they have assumed a very important role as far as bilateral partnership is concerned.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, in 2021, India and Vietnam will also concurrently serve as non-permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. And this is something the PM also said when he made his opening remarks today. The fact that both India and Vietnam will be in the UNSC as non-permanent members will also open up new opportunities for cooperation and coordination on various regional and international issues. Do you also feel that, because we have seen the working of the UNSC in the last few years, and whenever India has tried to push a resolution through, whether it is the designation of terrorists, it is always China that has been the hardest to convince. Do you feel that the fact that now India will be there, Vietnam will be there might be a better chance of getting these resolutions through?
I think the atmospherics will definitely be right, and also in addition to the atmospherics, the position of Vietnam and India on most international affairs is very similar. So I think there is going to be much greater synergy when India and Vietnam work together as far as the UN Security Council is concerned. If there are issues of the nature that you referred to, Simran, as far as Masood Azhar is concerned, or some of the other issues where the permanent members of the UN Security Council have a veto, then any number of countries standing together against China, and if China feels that it is in its own interest or the interest of its satellite states like Pakistan, and it wants to either put a technical hold or use the veto, then of course nothing can be done. But as you saw in the case of Masood Azhar also, it is the other permanent members, it was France, it was Britain, it was US, which got together and called out China's intransigent attitude. So I think both India and Vietnam will have to work with our partners together also, and with our partners in the UN Security Council in taking issues of what India has said that its focus would be on reformed multilateralism in terms of strengthening multilateral institutions, the WHO, WTO, some of the others, and also in terms of focusing on counterterrorism. So I think these are definitely issues that Vietnam also concurs with as far as India is concerned. So I think both the countries will really be able to work together as non-permanent members of UNSC next year.
Ambassador Sajjanhar, India-Vietnam relationship, and we see this growing partnership in terms of defense, in terms of other areas. What would you say are the two focus areas that maybe India and Vietnam should concentrate more in the coming few years, that you can actually give shape to a relationship which will have more substance, more dynamism to itself?
I think one is definitely in terms of the Indo-Pacific, and when we are talking about Quad, we are talking about peace, stability, security, prosperity in the region. Then, and we've been talking about the expansion of the Quad Plus, both in the Indo-Pacific vision and the expansion of Quad. In whichever, whether it is formal or informal, I think association of Vietnam in that would be very useful and very vital. We also need to recognize that during the time of the coronavirus pandemic, we saw that there was a Quad Plus meeting that used to take place every week. That is the 4 Quad countries plus Korea, Vietnam and New Zealand at foreign secretary level. So I think Indo-Pacific is one area. The other is in terms of trade and economy, because we need to recognize that Vietnam has expanded its exports of electronics and its production of electronics by 2 times, 100% in 5 years. So I think this is something that India and Vietnam need to collaborate with each other, that need to work with each other. India also needs to get supply chains into our country like Vietnam has got. India has not been successful so far. We need to get the supply chains, we need to get manufacturing, we need to provide employment and jobs for our Atmanirbhar Bharat strategy to succeed. And that is one area where I think India and Vietnam can work together, which will be win-win proposition for both of them as well as for the region, and it will reduce the huge dependence that the world and this region has on China.
And in the coming days, we will continue our discussions on the India-Vietnam relationship and also on India's Act East policy. With this, we bring today's discussion to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on India-Vietnam Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. The participants were Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, and Simran Sodhi, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our website newsonair.com. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.